This video is just a brief overview of the various right-click contextual menus and how you can edit them and how you can control them in Vectorworks. Most people are aware of the two context menus in Vectorworks, the two main ones. One occurs if you right-click on a blank area of the document. You just right-click on a blank space and you can see you can edit the palettes, layer options, and class options, and the working plane of this particular document. You can also change the scale. It's very common this way. That'll appear if you right-click on nothing at all. If you right-click on an object, you'll get a few different options. You'll see you have the send, the rotate, and they're contextual. So meaning that if you right-click on nothing, there's nothing to send, so it doesn't bother pulling that up in this menu. If you right-click on an object, you get different commands like lock, unlock, and edit. Most objects, just to give you some information, if you double-click them, that's going to do whatever their edit behavior is. This just gives us the modification of these points on a rectangle. But a few objects behave very differently depending on what they are. If we move over here, a few sample objects. If we right-click on a text object, the contextual menu will start offering different options like formatting text and checking spelling. If we edit something else like a dimension, if we right-click on it, we see another new option which is specific only to dimensions, which is add dimension, which just means you can include more options inside of a chain dimension, for instance. And once you have more, you can delete existing ones, pull that one away, so on like that. The other ones are the alignment options. Now, these will appear only if you have multiple objects selected. So if I have nothing selected here, I won't see the alignment options. But if I have two objects that can be aligned selected, I'll see these options here. And I can align these both to the left or undo these. And this is where you'll see it more often, is when you have a multiple objects selected that are all on the same plane. These are simple circles. Right-click, align distribute, align middle, and they align all right to their centers. You can also do a quick distribute horizontally and line them up perfectly very quickly like that. The other thing you can see is if you have two solid objects selected, when you right-click on them, you'll see different options. You'll have add solids, subtract solids, intersect solids, and section solids, as well as the align distribute options because we have multiple objects selected. You see these add solids and solid modifier options don't show when you have 2D objects selected. You instead see add surface, clip surface, intersect surface. Now, if you're ever confused about what's being shown there or what you're seeing there is not what you expect, it usually means you have a non-homogeneous selection. So here, if I only have 2D objects selected, I can select just these 2D objects. I have all the options I expect, adding surface, alignment, and subtracting. If I select different types of objects, for instance, two 2D objects and two 3D solids, I see my add surface, my clip surface for the 2D objects, but it will not also populate the 3D options here as well. This is done so that it doesn't just start stacking up a whole different bunch of menus just because I have a number of things selected. And if I have a very strange selection of objects, I'll only get the ones, usually this is the simplest, which will be the 2D options, so add surface, clip surface, and intersect surface. What a lot of people don't know, though, is that you can modify that contextual menu yourself. You don't need to use the ones that are just built in as their defaults only. You can't choose when these come up. So for instance, you couldn't tell it, I want add solids to show up whenever I'm selecting rectangles. It's always going to be dependent on these objects, but you can change the options that are available there. This is just really another way of doing shortcuts. For instance, if we wanted to, we could go to Tools, Workspaces, and edit the current workspace. Expand this to see it a little better, and we can see the two different types of object context menus here. So here for document context, we won't change this now because we're just right-clicking on objects for the moment. But in object context, we can add other commands here, anything that's a menu command. So one that I often see users making is create symbol. Create symbol. So now, if they were to right-click on any object or any number of objects after clicking OK to this, if we were to right-click on an object or any number of objects after selecting this, we can see create symbol is listed right here, and we can make it right from the right-click menu. Now, most users don't do this with the various menu commands. If they don't, they usually use something like edit and modify group. So you'll see just this. You could have used this keyboard shortcut to make a group instead, just Command G. But you can also go in here to the workspace editor, edit the current workspace, and in object context, we also can make create group. We also scroll down to group items. And we can have that be a right-click menu as well. So we could group and ungroup just from the right-click selection. We'll go ahead and add that, let that load. And now we have a contextual group and ungroup. So I can group from right-click menu, and I can ungroup as well. It'll still show their keyboard shortcuts, but this is just a method if you prefer the right-click menu and you don't like going for keyboard shortcuts all the time. Now, the document context is a little different. Since you don't have objects that you're clicking on, you pretty much only want to leave options in here that are going to affect the whole document. And the most common one that I see, if you edit the workspace again, are the export to PDF or print options, as that's something that you often want to do very quickly. And again, if you don't like the keyboard shortcuts for it, we can go to the other way. So let's go all menus, export PDF. There we are. If we add this to the very end, click OK. And you can see we very quickly now can export a PDF just by right-clicking on nothing. And that won't appear when we right-click on objects. Only the group and create symbol that we added here will appear. And you can see this will go gray if there's no group to ungroup. That option will simply stay off. There's nothing to ungroup. We group them together, and now we have an ungroup option here. Now if we right-click, export PDF, goes right to the PDF export, and we can save it right away. We don't need to wait for anything at all. Again, this is just a convenience feature, and this just shows you a few of the different ways that you can use it that you might not have been aware of.